The day my marriage ended started with Gary Lawson fumbling through small talk about the weather. It was early October, a Friday, and I'd just pulled into the driveway after 9 hours of staring at financial statements. Forensic accounting isn't glamorous work, but it pays well and suits my temperament. I find things that people don't want found. Hidden accounts, phantom transactions, the numerical breadcrumbs that white-collar criminals think they've swept away. Gary was at his mailbox pretending to sort through junk mail while clearly waiting for me. He's 58, retired postal worker, lives alone since his wife passed 4 years ago. Good neighbor. Keeps to himself mostly. "Hey, Jake," he lifted a hand. "How's work treating you?" "Same old, Gary. You know how it is." I grabbed my mail and started toward the house, but Gary shuffled closer, his body language all wrong. Shoulders tight, eyes darting everywhere except my face. "Listen," he said, then stopped. Scratched the back of his neck. "I don't want to get involved in anything." I waited. In my line of work, you learn that silence is the best interrogation technique. People can't stand empty air. They'll fill it eventually. Maybe just keep it down during the day? The walls between these houses, they're thinner than you'd think. I felt something cold settle in my stomach, but I kept my face neutral. "During the day?" "Gary, I'm at work during the day." His expression shifted. Embarrassment first, then the slow, dawning horror of a man who realizes he's said too much. "Oh, well, probably just the TV then. Lauren must have it up loud." "Sorry, forget I said anything." "Sure, Gary, no problem." I walked inside like nothing was wrong. 34 years old and I'd just gotten good at wearing masks. Lauren was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. My wife of 6 years, still beautiful at 32, dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater. Working from home as a marketing consultant meant she rarely dressed up during the week. Except she was wearing perfume. I could smell it the moment I stepped inside, that vanilla and sandalwood scent she usually saved for date nights. "Hey, babe." She turned and smiled, and I noticed the bedroom door down the hall was closed. We never closed that door. "How was your day?" "Long. Something smells good?" "Chicken marsala. I know it's your favorite." I set down my briefcase and crossed to kiss her cheek. The kitchen smelled like cleaning products underneath the cooking. Pine Sol maybe, and something else. Too clean. Lauren wasn't a messy person, but she wasn't obsessive about housework either. "You're sweet," I said. "What's the occasion?" "Does there need to be an occasion?" She wrapped her arms around my neck. Maybe I just missed my husband. Too affectionate, too eager. My mind was already cataloging inconsistencies the way it would catalog suspicious entries in a general ledger. We ate dinner. I asked about her work, her projects, whether she'd heard from her sister Nicole recently. Lauren chatted easily, touching my hand across the table, laughing at my dry jokes. A perfect wife having a perfect evening. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling while Lauren slept beside me. I didn't feel rage. That would come later. What I felt was colder, more precise. The same sensation I get when I open a client's books and realize something doesn't add up. I needed to know. Saturday morning, I told Lauren I was going to play golf with Pete from work. "In October?" She raised an eyebrow. "Pete's got a thing about getting in as many rounds as possible before it gets too cold. You know how he is." She didn't know how Pete was because Pete didn't exist, but she nodded anyway. I drove to an electronics store 3 towns over, far enough that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Paid cash for a small voice-activated recorder, the kind that looks like a USB drive. The clerk didn't ask questions. Probably thought I was checking up on a babysitter or something. Back home, I waited until Lauren went to the grocery store, then hid the recorder behind a row of books on the living room shelf. She never touched those books. Neither did I, really. They were decorative, the kind of thing you buy to fill space, The rest of the weekend, I played the role of devoted husband. Sunday night, I suggested a date night the following weekend. Lauren seemed pleased. "That sounds wonderful," she said. "We haven't done that in forever." "My fault. Work's been crazy. I want to make more time for us." She kissed me, and I kissed her back, and I felt absolutely nothing. Monday was the longest day of my life. 8 hours at the office, staring at spreadsheets without seeing them. My supervisor asked if I was feeling okay. I blamed a headache. At 6:45, I pulled into a pharmacy parking lot about a mile from home. Sat in my car, retrieved the recorder from my pocket. I'd grabbed it on my way out, mumbling something about needing to check the mail. I pressed play. Static. The hum of an empty house. Hours of nothing. Then, at the 1:27 p.m. timestamp, a knock at the door. Lauren's voice, bright and eager. "You're early." A man's voice, deeper. "Couldn't wait." The sound of kissing. Her giggle, breathless and girlish. A sound I hadn't heard her make in years. Footsteps moving away from the living room, toward the bedroom. I stopped the recording. My hands were steady. My breathing was even. I sat there for maybe 20 minutes, processing. Not the emotional betrayal. I'd compartmentalize that later. Right now, I was focused on the practical. The man's voice. I knew it. Something about the cadence, the easy confidence. But I couldn't place it. I drove home. Lauren had dinner ready. I told her about my day and she told me about hers, and neither of us mentioned the man who'd been in our bed 6 hours earlier. Tuesday and Wednesday, I followed the same routine. Retrieve the recorder, listen, replace it. The pattern was consistent. He arrived between 1:00 and 1:30 p.m., left by 4 salis, giving Lauren plenty of time to shower, clean, and reset the house before I got home at 6:30. They were careful, methodical. So was I. By Wednesday night, I'd confirmed everything except the one thing that mattered most. Who was he? Thursday, I called in sick. Told my supervisor I had a stomach bug, probably something I ate. Parked my car 2 streets over and walked to a spot behind Mrs. Patterson's hedges, where I could see my driveway without being visible from the street. October in Charlotte is still warm enough to sit outside without freezing. I'd brought a thermos of coffee and my patience. Forensic accounting teaches you patience. Sometimes you stare at numbers for days before you find the anomaly. 1:15 p.m. A silver BMW turned onto our street. I knew that car. I'd complimented it at last year's Christmas party. The driver parked in my driveway like he owned the place. Stepped out, adjusted his jacket, and walked to my front door with the confidence of a man who'd done this 100 times before. Derek Hayes, 36 years old. Commercial real estate. Married to my wife's sister Nicole for 3 years. My brother-in-law. I watched him disappear inside my house. The door didn't even close all the way before I saw Lauren's arms wrap around his neck through the window. I didn't go home that day. Drove to a diner off the highway instead, ordered coffee I didn't drink, and sat in a corner booth for 3 hours. The scope of what I was dealing with had expanded exponentially. This wasn't just my wife sleeping with some random guy. This was a betrayal that touched everyone in our family. Derek at Thanksgiving, carving the turkey while I passed him the gravy. Derek at Nicole's birthday, his arm around both sisters for the family photo. Derek shaking my hand at our anniversary party 6 months ago, telling me I was a lucky man. And the worst part, the part that made my coffee turn to acid in my stomach, was that I'd introduced them. 4 years ago, at a company event. Derek had been a client of our firm, and I'd thought he and Nicole would hit it off. I'd played matchmaker at their wedding. Gave a toast about how some connections are just meant to be. I thought about Nicole, my sister-in-law, but also my friend. She'd been the one to convince Lauren to give me a chance when we first met. She called me on my birthday every year without fail. Did she know? Was I the last idiot to figure this out? I thought about confrontation. Walking in there, catching them in the act, the screaming and crying and broken dishes. Then I dismissed it. Confrontation was emotional. Satisfying in the moment maybe, but strategically useless. I didn't want satisfaction. I wanted justice. I finished my cold coffee and drove home. The next 2 weeks were an exercise in self-control. I slept beside my wife every night, kissed her goodbye every morning, and spent every spare moment building a case. My training served me well. Forensic accountants are professional paranoids. We assume everyone is lying until the numbers prove otherwise. Our phone plan was in my name. I logged into the account and pulled 3 years of call records. The data told a clear story. Calls and texts between Lauren and Derek had spiked 18 months ago, right around the time I'd been traveling constantly for the Hodges audit case. 3 months of weekly trips to Atlanta, sometimes gone 4 or 5 days at a stretch. I'd thought Lauren understood. The case was important, the biggest of my career. She'd told me she was proud of me, that she'd be fine, that I shouldn't worry about her. Turns out she'd been plenty busy. But here's what the data also showed. The communication pattern started 3 months before my travel ramped up. She hadn't drifted into Derek's arms because I was gone. She'd been there already. My absence just made it easier. Lauren's phone backed up to our shared cloud account. She'd probably forgotten that. It was something I'd set up years ago for convenience. I found a hidden folder without much difficulty. Photos. Nothing explicit, but intimate in a way that made my jaw clench. Derek and Lauren at a hotel room, her head on his shoulder. Derek and Lauren at a restaurant in Asheville, candles on the table between them. That one hit hard. She'd told me that weekend was a work retreat. Said her company was doing team building at some resort. I'd dropped her off at the airport myself. I downloaded everything. Timestamps, locations, metadata. The financial trail came next. Our joint credit card statements showed a pattern of small cash withdrawals, $200, $300 at a time, from ATMs near hotels and restaurants outside our usual radius. I'd never noticed before. Why would I? I trusted her. But the real discovery came when I dug deeper. Lauren had a separate savings account I'd never known about. $12,000 accumulated over 18 months. I traced the deposits. Most came from her regular paychecks, siphoned off in amounts small enough not to raise flags. But some came from external transfers. From Derek. That's when I realized this wasn't just an affair. Derek was funding something. A future, maybe. A nest egg for when they finally decided to blow up their marriages and run off together. Or maybe just gifts, trips, hotels, the expensive kind of secret. Either way, he was paying for the privilege of sleeping with my wife. 3 weeks after Gary's warning, I engineered a lunch with Nicole. Nothing suspicious, just a brother-in-law checking in on family. I suggested that new Thai place downtown, the one she'd mentioned wanting to try. She looked tired when she showed up, dark circles under her eyes, smile that didn't quite reach all the way. "Thanks for this," she said, sliding into the booth across from me. I needed to get out of the house. "Everything okay?" She shrugged, picking at her menu. "Derek's been weird lately, distant. Working late all the time, says he's got some big deal closing." A pause. "He joined a gym last month. Who joins a gym in September?" Men having affairs, I thought. Men who want to look good for someone who isn't their wife. "Maybe it's just stress," I said. "Real estate's been volatile." "Maybe." She didn't sound convinced. "Enough about me. How are you and Lauren?" "God, you two are like the perfect couple. Sometimes I'm actually jealous." The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. "We're good," I said. "You know Lauren, she keeps me on my toes." We talked for another hour. I learned that Derek had been taking mysterious phone calls late at night, that he'd started locking his phone when he used to leave it sitting around, that Nicole had found a receipt for flowers she never received. She knew something was wrong. She just didn't know what. I paid for lunch and hugged her goodbye and felt like the worst person in the world for not telling her everything. But the timing wasn't right. If I told Nicole now, she'd confront Derek. Derek would warn Lauren. The whole thing would explode before I was ready. Nicole deserved the truth. She'd get it. Just not yet. I became obsessed with the timeline. Not in an unhealthy way, or maybe exactly in an unhealthy way, but one that served my purposes. I needed to understand when this started, how it evolved, what the trajectory of betrayal actually looked like. So I built a spreadsheet. Dates on one axis, evidence on the other. Phone records, credit card statements, calendar entries, photos. Every piece of data I could gather, organized and cross-referenced. The first verifiable contact between Lauren and Derek happened at Austin's birthday party, 2 years and 4 months before Gary's warning. They'd been seated next to each other at dinner. I remembered that now. I'd been at the other end of the table talking to Nicole about some article she'd read. The text messages started 3 days later. Innocent enough at first, a shared joke from the party, a restaurant recommendation, generic small talk. But the frequency increased. By month 2, they were texting daily. By month 3, the calls started. The first hotel receipt I could find was 6 months in. A Hilton in Raleigh, booked under Derek's company card. Lauren had told me she was at a client dinner that night. I remembered because I'd offered to pick her up afterward, and she'd said no, she'd Uber home. She'd come home at 11, smelling like hotel soap, and I'd been too tired to notice. The spreadsheet grew. I mapped every lie Lauren had told me against the evidence I had. Work retreats that were really romantic getaways. Late meetings that were really afternoons in my own bed. Gym sessions that were really, well, the scope of the deception was staggering. Not just the number of times, but the creativity of the lies. The elaborate cover stories, the coordinated alibis, the fake calendar entries. They'd been working together, a partnership of betrayal. I found the emails on a Thursday. Lauren's work account was separate, but her personal Gmail was logged in on our shared family computer. She must have checked it and forgotten to sign out. I didn't go looking for anything specific. I was checking my own email when I noticed her account in the corner of the screen. A moment of hesitation. This felt different from phone records, more invasive somehow. And then I clicked. Her inbox was unremarkable. Newsletters, promotional emails, the occasional message from her mother. But the sent folder told a different story. Emails to Derek, sent during work hours. Not explicit, they were too careful for that, but intimate in ways that made my stomach turn. Missing you already? Yesterday was incredible. Can't wait for Tuesday, counting the hours. I know it's complicated, but I don't regret anything. Not 1 second. And then, from 6 months ago, sometimes I think about what it would be like, just you and me. No more sneaking around, no more lies. Do you ever think about that? Derek's response. All the time. But we both know it's not that simple. I know. I love him, Derek. I do. But not like I love you. That one hit harder than the recordings. Harder than the photos. This was Lauren putting her feelings into words, making a choice, and the choice wasn't me. I saved the emails, added them to the spreadsheet, kept building the case. The regulatory board moved faster than I expected. 2 weeks after my anonymous tip, Reggie called me. That firm you asked about? Hayes Commercial Partners? What about it? Thought you should know. We've opened a formal investigation. Some interesting discrepancies in their escrow accounting. Your brother-in-law might want to lawyer up. I played dumb. Really? Derek? He always seems so put together. The put-together ones are usually the worst. They think they're too smart to get caught. A pause. This didn't come from me, Jake. Of course not. Thanks for the heads up. I hung up and allowed myself a small smile. Derek's absences from the office, the ones I'd documented through my recordings, coincided perfectly with the gaps in his firm's paperwork. Every time he was at my house, there was a client meeting he'd missed or a document that hadn't been signed. The investigators wouldn't have known where to look without my tip, but now that they were looking, the evidence was there. Derek had stolen money. That wasn't my doing. He'd created the crime himself. I just made sure the right people found out. A former colleague of mine, Reggie Thompson, had moved to the State Financial Regulatory Board a few years back. We'd kept in touch. Occasional drinks, the odd email chain about industry gossip. I called him that week, framed it as catching up. "Hey, weird question," I said, after we'd exchanged pleasantries. "You ever come across a firm called Hayes Commercial Partners?" A pause on the other end. "Why do you ask?" "My brother-in-law is one of the partners. We're thinking about investing in one of their projects, but you know me. I like to do my homework." "Off the record?" Reggie's voice dropped. "There's been some noise. Nothing public yet, but we've had complaints. Possible irregularities with client escrow accounts." Irregularities. Money moving in ways it shouldn't. Could be sloppy bookkeeping. Could be something else. We're looking into it. I thanked him and ended the call. So Derek wasn't just an adulterer. He might also be a thief. That information would be useful. 4 weeks after discovery, I sat across from Victoria Palmer in her downtown office. Victoria was 52, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, and had a reputation for handling high-conflict divorces with surgical precision. The kind of attorney you hired when you wanted to win, not just survive. I laid out my evidence. The recordings, the photos, the phone records, the financial transfers. Victoria reviewed everything in silence, occasionally making notes. When she finished, she leaned back in her chair and regarded me with something like professional admiration. "Mr. Turner, in 23 years of family law, I've rarely seen documentation this thorough. It's what I do for a living, just different context." "North Carolina is an equitable distribution state," she continued. "Adultery doesn't directly affect asset division, but it absolutely factors into alimony. Given this evidence, your wife won't be seeing a dime." "What about the house?" "You made the down payment? Most of the mortgage payments?" "All documented." "Then you'll keep it." Her attorney might push back, but this... She tapped the folder. "This is ironclad." Victoria gave me the standard advice. Don't move out. Don't confront. Don't do anything that could be construed as vindictive or retaliatory. Document everything. Play the long game. I intended to. But I also intended to do something Victoria hadn't suggested. The plan came together over the next week. First, I contacted Reggie again. Anonymous tip this time, sent from a burner email account. I provided specific dates and times when Derek had claimed to be in client meetings. Dates I knew from my recordings he'd actually been in my house. The regulatory board could do their own math. Second, I installed a small camera in the living room. North Carolina's a one-party consent state for recordings, and I owned the house, so anything captured in common areas was admissible. I wasn't interested in bedroom footage. I just needed video of Derek walking through my front door like he belonged there. Third, and this was the part that required careful planning, I suggested hosting Thanksgiving early. "We always go to your parents' place," I told Lauren over dinner. "Let's do something different this year. Have everyone here." Her eyes lit up. "Really? I've always wanted to host." "Then let's do it. Your parents, Nicole and Derek, Austin and his wife, the whole family." She practically bounced out of her chair to kiss me. "This is going to be amazing. I'll start planning the menu tomorrow." I smiled and told her I couldn't wait. 1 week before Thanksgiving, I met Derek for coffee. I'd called him earlier that day, said I wanted to discuss some investment options. real estate diversification. He'd been eager, probably thought I was a potential mark. He showed up at the coffee shop looking like a man without a care in the world. Expensive suit, designer watch, the easy smile of someone who's never faced real consequences. "Jake, good to see you, man." He shook my hand firmly. "Lauren said you've been working crazy hours. She worries about you." "I'm sure she does." We made small talk for a few minutes. Real estate trends, market projections, the weather. Then I reached into my jacket and slid an envelope across the table. "What's this?" "Open it." Derek's smile faltered as he pulled out the contents. Time-stamped photos of him entering my house. Printouts of his financial transfers to Lauren. A summary of his text message frequency with my wife. The color drained from his face. "Jake, don't." I kept my voice low and even. "Don't explain. Don't apologize. Don't lie. I've heard enough of your voice on my recordings." "Recordings?" He looked physically ill. 18 months, Derek. In my house. In my bed. While I was at work, you were there with my wife 3 or 4 times a week. He started to speak, stopped, tried again. "Listen, man, it's complicated, okay? Lauren and I, we have this connection. I don't care. And Nicole, she's great, but the spark isn't there anymore. I don't care." He went quiet. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "At Thanksgiving dinner, in front of both our families, you're going to confess. Everything. You're going to tell Nicole and everyone else exactly what you've been doing." "You're insane." "Maybe." I leaned forward. "But here's the alternative. I've already contacted the State Financial Regulatory Board. They're very interested in where you were during all those client meetings you supposedly attended. The ones where escrow money went missing." Derek's face went gray. That's got nothing to do with this." "No? Funny how your afternoon visits to my house line up perfectly with documentation gaps at your firm. I'm sure the investigators will think that's just a coincidence." "You're bluffing." "Derek," I smiled. "I find hidden money for a living." "Do you really think I'm bluffing?" He stared at me, and I watched the calculations happening behind his eyes. Fight or flight? Denial or damage control? "What do you want?" he finally asked. "I told you. Thanksgiving. You confess. If you do it my way, I'll let you control the narrative. Tell them it was a mistake, you're sorry, whatever you need to say. If you don't..." I shrugged. "I have video. I have audio. I have records of you paying my wife for the privilege of sleeping with her. I'll show everyone everything, and then I'll make sure the regulatory board has enough evidence to bury you." "And if I warn Lauren? Tell her you know?" "Then I go straight to Nicole, tonight, and the board, and your partners, and every professional contact I can find." I gathered my things and stood. "Your choice, Derek. Be a man for once in your life, or let me do it for you." I left him sitting there, staring at the photos, looking like a man watching his own execution. The week before Thanksgiving was a masterclass in performance. Lauren threw herself into preparation with the enthusiasm of someone who had no idea her world was about to collapse. She spent hours planning the menu, making lists, testing recipes. I'd come home to find her elbow-deep in flour, experimenting with her grandmother's pie crust, asking me to taste the cranberry sauce. "More orange zest, you think? Or is it too much?" "It's perfect," I'd say. "Everything's perfect." And I'd mean it in a way. Everything was perfect, perfectly positioned for what was coming. Derek, meanwhile, was falling apart. I saw it at the one family gathering we had that week, a casual Sunday lunch at Lauren's parents' house. He barely spoke, couldn't make eye contact with me, jumped every time his phone buzzed. Nicole kept asking if he was feeling okay. "Work stress," he muttered. "Big deal falling through. Nothing to worry about." Lauren shot him a look I recognized now. Concern mixed with something else. Complicity. They'd been partners in deception for so long that his distress made her nervous. What did he know that she didn't? After lunch, I found myself alone with Derek in the backyard. Lauren's father wanted to show Nicole something in the garage, and Lauren was helping her mother with dishes. Derek stood by the fence, pretending to admire the fall foliage. I walked up beside him. "Nice day," I said. He flinched. "Jake, listen, about our conversation." "What conversation?" "The coffee shop. The pictures." "I don't know what you're talking about." I smiled pleasantly. "We discussed real estate investment opportunities. That's all." He stared at me, and I watched the gears turning. Was I giving him an out? Playing some kind of game? Are you saying you've changed your mind?" "I'm saying I hope you're ready for Thursday. Turkey Day. Family. Togetherness." I clapped him on the shoulder. "Should be memorable." I walked back inside and didn't look at him again. Wednesday night, I couldn't sleep. Not from nerves. I'd made my peace with what I was about to do. But I kept running through scenarios. What if Derek confessed early, before dinner? What if Lauren figured something out? What if the video didn't play properly? At 3 in the morning, I got out of bed and went to the living room. Tested the connection between my phone and the TV. Played the video on mute just to make sure it worked. Lauren slept through all of it. I stood there in the dark, watching my wife on screen, greeting her lover at our front door. The timestamp glowing in the corner. The casual intimacy of their body language. 18 months, over 500 days. Thousands of lies. I turned off the TV and went back to bed. Thursday morning, Lauren woke up at 6 to start cooking. I helped where I could, peeling potatoes, chopping vegetables, staying out of the way when she needed space. We worked in comfortable silence, moving around each other like we'd done 100 times before. "I love this," she said, somewhere around mid-morning. "Cooking together. We should do this more often." "We should." "I've been thinking." She wiped her hands on a towel and turned to face me. "Maybe we could talk about expanding the family? Starting to try?" I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. "Let's get through the holidays first," I said. "Talk about it in the new year." "Of course. No rush." She kissed me on the cheek. "I just want you to know I'm ready, whenever you are." I went back to peeling potatoes. The guests started arriving at 4. Lauren's parents first, Richard and Ellen, both in their early 60s, dressed up for the occasion. Ellen handed Lauren a pumpkin pie she'd insisted on bringing despite Lauren's protests. Richard shook my hand firmly and asked about work. "Same old," I said. "Finding hidden money, catching people who think they're smarter than the numbers." "Honest work," Richard said approvingly. "More people should do it." I wondered if he'd feel the same way by the end of the night. Austin and his wife arrived next. Megan, 7 months pregnant with their first child. The pregnancy had been a long-awaited miracle after 2 years of trying, and the whole family treated Megan like she was made of glass. "How are you feeling?" Lauren asked, ushering her toward the most comfortable chair. "Fat. Tired. Ready for this kid to get out." Megan laughed. "But grateful. So grateful." Austin hovered near his wife, unable to stop smiling. He'd always been the protective type. Played linebacker in college, still had the build, now channeled that energy into doting on Megan. "Jake, buddy," he said, pulling me into a hug. "Good to see you. Thanks for hosting." "Family's important," I said. "Wanted everyone together." The last to arrive were Derek and Nicole. I heard the car pull up and watched through the window. Nicole got out first, adjusting her dress, fixing her hair. Pretty, in that careful way of women who try too hard to hold on to husbands who aren't worth keeping. Derek sat in the driver's seat for a long moment before getting out. Even from inside, I could see his hesitation. The debate happening behind his eyes. He could run. Get in the car and drive away. Call Lauren with some excuse, a sudden emergency, anything to avoid what was coming. But he got out, walked to the door, rang the bell like he'd done 100 times before. I answered. Derek, Nicole, welcome. Thanks for having us. Nicole hugged me. The house looks beautiful. Lauren did all the work. I just carried things. Derek hung back. Wouldn't meet my eyes. Shook my hand with a grip like wet paper. Jake. Derek, glad you could make it. I showed them to the living room, where Lauren was pouring drinks. She lit up when she saw them, or rather, when she saw him. I watched the flicker of something pass between them, quickly suppressed. The language of secrets. Nicole, Derek, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. She hugged her sister, hugged Derek for a beat too long, offered wine. None for me, Derek said. Driving. Smart. He wanted to be clear-headed when everything went sideways. Dinner was a performance I'll never forget. Lauren had outdone herself. The turkey was golden and perfect. The sides were magazine-worthy. The table looked like something from a catalog. Everyone praised her cooking. Everyone said how wonderful it was to be together. I sat at the head of the table and watched. Derek, picking at his food, avoiding conversation. Nicole, trying to engage him, failing, looking hurt. Lauren, playing the hostess, chattering about recipes and holiday plans, sneaking glances at Derek when she thought no one was watching. Her parents, oblivious. Austin and Megan, wrapped up in each other and the baby coming. They were all so comfortable, so secure in the illusion of family. None of them knew that under this table, under this roof, 18 months of lies were about to collapse. I ate my turkey, complimented the stuffing, asked Austin about his job, made a joke that got Richard laughing. Normal, natural, the performance of a lifetime. And then the plates were cleared and coffee was poured, and I stood up and clinked my glass. Thanksgiving arrived cold and clear. Lauren had outdone herself. The house looked like something from a magazine. Candles, flowers, the good china we never used. She'd spent 3 days cooking, humming to herself, blissfully unaware of what was coming. The guests arrived in waves. Lauren's parents first, her father already complaining about traffic. Then Austin and his wife, carrying wine and appetizers. Finally, Nicole and Derek. Derek looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Pale, drawn, dark circles under his eyes. Nicole kept shooting him concerned glances. Are you feeling okay? She asked him as they settled into the living room. You look terrible. Fine, just tired. Work's been brutal. I handed him a glass of wine. Our eyes met, and I saw the fear there. Good. He should be afraid. Dinner was surreal. Lauren played the perfect hostess. Derek barely touched his food, and I sat at the head of the table making conversation like nothing was wrong. I asked Lauren's father about his golf game. I complimented Austin's wife on her green bean casserole. I told Nicole her dress was lovely, normal, comfortable. The last normal moment any of us would have for a long time. After the main course, I stood and clinked my glass. I'd like to make a toast. Lauren beamed at me. Oh, honey, that's sweet. To family, I said. To the people around this table who mean the most to us. To honesty, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. I looked at Derek. He was gripping his wine glass so hard I thought it might shatter. Derek, anything you'd like to add? The table went quiet. Everyone was looking at him now, sensing something was wrong even if they didn't know what. Derek opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Nicole, then at Lauren, then back at me. He didn't speak. I nodded slowly. Then I'll do it. Jake. Lauren's voice was sharp. What's going on? I pulled out my phone. Something I should have shared a long time ago. Jake, wait. Lauren started to rise from her chair. Sit down. She sat. I connected my phone to the TV in the living room. Everyone had shifted to see the screen. Lauren's mother was frowning, confused. Nicole looked scared. I pressed play. The video was clear enough. Derek's silver BMW pulling into the driveway. Derek walking to the front door. Lauren opening it, her face lighting up, pulling him inside for a kiss that was definitely not sisterly-in-law. The timestamp in the corner read October 10th, 1:23 p.m. For a moment, no one moved. The video kept playing. Derek and Lauren in the living room, her leading him by the hand toward the bedroom, both of them laughing. Then chaos. Lauren's mother screamed. Actually screamed, like someone had stabbed her. Nicole made a sound I'll never forget. This low, wounded noise like an animal caught in a trap. Lauren was on her feet, shouting at me. "Turn it off! Jake, turn it off right now!" "Why? It's just the TV, Lauren. You watch it during the day all the time." Derek tried to bolt for the door. Austin, Lauren's brother, a former linebacker still built like one, stepped in front of him. "Sit down, Derek. Get out of my way. Sit down." Derek sat. I turned off the TV. The silence that followed was deafening. 18 months, I said. My voice was calm. I'd practiced this. That's how long they've been seeing each other. 3, sometimes 4 times a week. In our house, in our bed. I looked at Lauren. While I was at work paying the mortgage, trusting you. Jake? Tears were streaming down her face now. Jake, please, it didn't mean anything. It was a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is missing an exit on the highway. You made a choice, Lauren. You made it over and over again for 18 months. You lied to me every single day. You helped him lie to your own sister. Nicole was sobbing now, her mother's arms around her. She wouldn't look at Derek. Couldn't. Derek was just sitting there, head in his hands, like a man waiting for the guillotine to drop. I have records, I continued. Phone records showing thousands of texts and calls between them. Photos from their trips together, trips she told me were for work. Financial records showing Derek transferred over $12,000 to Lauren's secret savings account. I paused. I've already filed for divorce. My attorney has all the documentation. You had this planned, Lauren whispered. This whole dinner. You planned this. Yes? You're a monster. I'm a monster? I actually laughed. I'm not the one who spent 18 months sleeping with my sister's husband. I'm not the one who lied about work retreats while checking into hotels with my brother-in-law. I'm not the one who sat across the table from Nicole at every family dinner, knowing what I was doing to her. Lauren had no response to that. Nicole finally lifted her head. Her makeup was ruined, her eyes red and swollen. She looked at Derek with an expression of such pure hatred that he actually flinched. How long? She asked. He didn't answer. How long, Derek? Nicole, baby, please. Don't call me that. Don't ever call me that again. She stood, grabbed her purse. Mom, Dad, take me home. Lauren's parents rose immediately. Her father paused at the door, looking at his younger daughter with something between disgust and heartbreak. Lauren, I don't even know what to say. Daddy, he shook his head and left. Austin and his wife followed shortly after, Austin pausing only to tell Derek, if I ever see you again, I'll break your jaw. And then it was just the 3 of us. Lauren, Derek, and me. Lauren tried one more time. Jake, please. We can work through this. Counseling, therapy, whatever you need. I love you. I made a mistake. But I love you. You don't love me. You love the life I gave you. The house, the stability, the nice dinners with the family you betrayed. I stood and straightened my jacket. Get your things and leave, Lauren. You can stay with Derek since you've been spending so much time together anyway. Where am I supposed to go? I don't care. Derek was already heading for the door. Lauren grabbed his arm. Derek, wait. We need to figure this out. He shook her off. Figure what out? It's over, Lauren. Everything's over. But what about us? What about everything we planned? There is no us. He laughed bitterly. There never was. You were a distraction, a warm body. Did you actually think I was going to leave Nicole for you? The look on Lauren's face was almost worth all of it. Almost. Derek left. Lauren collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. I walked to the kitchen and started cleaning up the dishes. The drive home for Lauren's family that night was apparently brutal. I heard the details later from Austin, who'd ridden with his parents and Nicole. Ellen sobbed the entire way. Richard gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles went white and didn't say a single word for 45 minutes. Nicole sat in the back seat between Austin and Megan, shaking so hard that Megan held her hand the whole time despite her pregnancy discomfort. I knew, Nicole kept saying. Part of me knew. Why didn't I see it? Because they didn't want you to see it, Austin said. Because they're liars. When they got to the parents' house, Nicole went straight to the guest room and locked the door. Ellen could hear her crying through the walls until sometime around 4 in the morning. Derek didn't go home that night. Or the next. He checked into a hotel and sent Nicole a series of texts that ranged from apologetic to pathetic to angry. Please let me explain. It didn't mean anything. You have to understand, Lauren and I. Fine. If you won't talk to me, don't expect anything in the divorce. That last one was a mistake. Nicole screenshotted it and sent it to her attorney the next morning. The Monday after Thanksgiving, I walked into Victoria Palmer's office with a cardboard box full of evidence. We're ready to file, I said. Victoria reviewed the material one more time. The recordings, the photos, the emails I discovered, the financial records, the video from Thanksgiving itself. You've been thorough, she said. That's my job. No, Jake. This goes beyond thorough. This is… She shook her head, something like admiration in her expression. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've never seen a betrayed spouse this prepared. When you find something wrong, you document it. Then you act. Most people would have confronted their spouse the moment they suspected. Lost control. Given the other side ammunition. I'm not most people. Victoria nodded slowly. No. You're certainly not. We filed that afternoon. Lauren was served papers at her parents' house the following day. Lauren's attorney was a woman named Patricia Decker, aggressive, expensive, known for fighting dirty. Her opening gambit was to claim that I'd entrapped Lauren by recording her without consent. Victoria anticipated this and shut it down immediately. North Carolina allows single-party recording. I was a party to the household. The recordings were legal. Patricia's second attempt was an invasion of privacy claim regarding the hidden camera. Also shot down. My house, common areas only, no expectation of privacy in the living room. Third try, intentional infliction of emotional distress through the Thanksgiving revelation. Victoria actually laughed at that one. Your client spent 18 months engaged in an affair with her sister's husband, Victoria said during the deposition. She lied to everyone she claimed to love, repeatedly and systematically, and now she wants to claim emotional distress because her husband exposed the truth? Please. Patricia dropped that argument. Lauren tried to negotiate. Through her attorney, she proposed various settlements. More of the house equity, spousal support for a limited time, division of retirement accounts. I rejected everything. She gets what the law requires and not a penny more, I told Victoria. Adultery forfeits alimony in this state. She knew the rules. She broke them anyway. The final settlement, reached 4 months after Thanksgiving, gave Lauren $32,000 from our joint savings and nothing else. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and my dignity. When she signed the papers, Lauren looked at me for a long moment. I hope you're happy, she said. I hope ruining everything made you happy. I didn't ruin anything, Lauren. You did. I just documented it. She left without another word. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Lauren hired a lawyer who tried to argue that I'd entrapped her, that my surveillance was an invasion of privacy, that the Thanksgiving revelation constituted intentional infliction of emotional distress. Victoria demolished every argument. The evidence was legally obtained. The confrontation took place in my own home, and North Carolina courts take a dim view of adulterers trying to paint themselves as victims. I kept the house. Lauren forfeited alimony. She got a small portion of our joint assets, about $30,000. And that was it. She moved back in with her parents initially, then into a small apartment across town. I heard through the grapevine that her marketing career had taken a hit. Word travels fast in professional circles, and Derek had connections everywhere. Some of Lauren's clients were his contacts. They weren't interested in working with her anymore. She tried to reach out twice. The first time was a handwritten letter, 5 pages of apologies and explanations and promises to do better. I read it once, then threw it away. The second time was a phone call, late at night, her voice slurred from wine. I miss you, Jake. I miss us. Can we just talk? There's nothing to talk about. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. Don't you believe in forgiveness? I believe in consequences. Good night, Lauren. I hung up and blocked her number. Derek's reckoning came slower, but harder. The regulatory investigation accelerated after Thanksgiving. Investigators now had a clear pattern of Derek's absences from the office, dates and times when he'd claimed to be in client meetings but was actually at my house. They cross-referenced this with escrow account irregularities. The math was damning. Over 3 years, Derek had siphoned approximately $400,000 from client escrow accounts. Not enough to be immediately obvious, but enough to matter. He'd disguised the transfers as legitimate business expenses, maintenance costs, administrative fees. The kind of numbers that look normal unless you know exactly where to look. I knew where to look, and I'd told them. The formal indictment came down in March, 4 months after Thanksgiving. 12 counts of wire fraud, 6 counts of breach of fiduciary duty, 2 counts of money laundering. Derek's partners immediately dissolved the partnership and issued a statement distancing themselves from his actions. His real estate license was suspended pending investigation, then permanently revoked after the indictment. He hired expensive lawyers. They tried every tactic: procedural challenges, evidence suppression, claims of prosecutorial overreach. Nothing stuck. The documentation was too solid. Derek tried to blame me publicly, claiming I'd orchestrated his downfall as revenge for an affair. He gave interviews to local media outlets, painting himself as the victim of a vindictive husband who couldn't handle his wife's emotional connection with another man. This is about a scorned husband using his forensic accounting skills to destroy someone's life, Derek told one reporter. The affair was wrong, I admit that. But what he did, digging through my professional life, feeding information to investigators, that's not justice. That's revenge. The reporter asked if he'd actually committed the financial crimes he was accused of. Derek's lawyer intervened before he could answer. The court of public opinion wasn't kind to him. Comments on the news articles were uniformly hostile. So he cheats on his wife, steals from clients, and now he's the victim, one commenter wrote. Some people really can't take responsibility for anything. The trial was brief. The evidence was overwhelming. Derek's own documentation habits had created a paper trail a child could follow. His absences from the office were logged in company calendars. The missing escrow funds were tracked through bank records. His affair schedule had given investigators the exact windows to examine. Conviction on 9 of the 12 wire fraud counts. All 6 breach of fiduciary duty counts. 1 money laundering count. Sentencing: 4 years, Minimum security. Eligible for parole in 2. Derek's expression when the sentence was read was something I'll never forget. Not anger, not defeat, just blank incomprehension. Like he still couldn't understand how his carefully constructed life had collapsed so completely. Nicole attended the sentencing hearing. She sat in the back row, alone, and watched the father of no children, the husband of nobody anymore, get led away in handcuffs. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. The outcome was enough. Derek's reckoning came slower, but harder. The regulatory board completed their investigation 3 months after Thanksgiving. Turns out, Derek had been skimming from client escrow accounts for years. Small amounts, carefully hidden, nothing obvious. But the investigators knew exactly where to look, thanks to an anonymous tip that pointed them toward specific dates and times when Derek claimed to be at work, but was actually elsewhere. Specifically, at my house. The absence documentation was damning. Time cards showing Derek in client meetings while camera footage proved he was in my driveway. Missing signatures on escrow transfers that occurred during his afternoon appointments. Derek was indicted on 12 counts of wire fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. His partnership was dissolved. His real estate license was revoked. Last I heard, he was looking at 3 to 5 years minimum. He tried to claim I'd set him up. Gave interviews to anyone who would listen about how his brother-in-law had orchestrated his downfall as revenge for an affair. But here's the thing about truth. I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't plant evidence or frame him for crimes he didn't commit. Derek stole that money himself. He conducted that affair himself. He lied to his clients and his wife and his family himself. All I did was make sure the right people knew where to look. Nicole reached out 2 months after Thanksgiving. I'd been dreading that call. Part of me expected anger, blame. I was the one who destroyed her marriage in front of everyone she loved. But when I answered, her voice was calm. Can we meet? I think I owe you a thank you. We met at a coffee shop near her new apartment. She looked different, thinner, tired, but there was something harder in her eyes now. Stronger. I'm sorry, I said. I know the way I handled it was brutal? She smiled faintly. Yeah, it was. I've had nightmares about that dinner. I should have told you privately. I was so focused on making sure they couldn't spin the narrative that I didn't think about how it would affect you. No, you did right. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. If you'd told me privately, I would have confronted Derek. He would have lied, and I would have believed him because I always believed him. The only way I was ever going to really see was if I couldn't deny it. I still feel terrible. Don't. I'm actually grateful. You respected me enough to tell me the truth even when it was ugly. That's more than my own sister did. We talked for 2 hours about the divorce proceedings, the family fallout, the difficulty of rebuilding a life you thought was solid. Nicole had found a therapist she liked. She was looking for a new apartment, further from the memories. The worst part isn't the betrayal, she said. It's realizing how stupid I was. All those signs I ignored, the late nights, the locked phone, the distance. I knew something was wrong. I just couldn't admit it. That's not stupidity. That's trust. Misplaced trust. Trust is never misplaced. The betrayal is on them, not us. She studied me for a long moment. You're handling this better than me. I had more time to prepare. And honestly, I'm just built this way. I find problems and I solve them. This was just a different kind of problem. Nicole laughed. A real laugh. The first one I'd heard from her since everything fell apart. God, you're strange, Jake. Strange in a good way. Over the next few months, Nicole and I developed an unlikely friendship. We'd meet for lunch every few weeks, comparing notes on the rebuilding process. She'd tell me about her therapy sessions, the stages of grief she was working through, the anger that still caught her off guard at random moments. I was at the grocery store yesterday, she told me once, and I saw this couple in the produce section. They were bickering about avocados, and I lost it. Stood there crying next to the bananas because I realized I'd never bicker with anyone about avocados again. You will, I said. Eventually. Easy for you to say. You're already dating. Nothing serious. Still, you're moving forward. She poked at her salad. I'm still stuck in place. Nicole. I waited until she looked up. It's been 6 months. You're allowed to be stuck. There's no timeline for getting over this. Weren't you the one who said we shouldn't let them win? Not letting them win doesn't mean pretending you're fine when you're not. It means not giving up. You're not giving up. You're healing. She was quiet for a moment. Lauren tried to call me last week. I felt my jaw tighten. What did she want? To apologize, to explain. She said she never meant to hurt me, that what happened with Derek was complicated, that she hoped someday we could be sisters again. What did you say? I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail. Nicole's expression hardened. She can hope all she wants. I've got nothing to say to her. Good. Is that wrong? She's my sister. Family's supposed to be people who love you and don't sleep with your husband. Lauren made her choice. She chose Derek over you, over me, over everyone. She doesn't get to undo that with a phone call. Nicole nodded slowly. You know what the worst part is? I introduced them. At Jake's company party, remember? I thought Derek should network more, expand his contacts. I pushed him to talk to Lauren. That's not your fault. Intellectually, I know that. But I keep thinking, if I hadn't pushed him toward her, maybe none of this would have happened. Derek was always going to find someone. If not Lauren, then another woman. That's who he is. A predator looking for prey. Nicole flinched at the word. I mean it, I said. This wasn't about you failing as a wife. This wasn't about anything you did or didn't do. Derek wanted something forbidden, and he took it. The only person responsible is him. And Lauren. We sat in silence for a while after that. We stayed in touch after that. Not romantically. Neither of us was ready for that and probably never would be with each other. Too much shared damage. But we understood each other in a way no one else could. Two people who'd been betrayed by the same people, figuring out what comes next. 1 year later, I was sitting on my back porch, watching the sun set over the neighborhood. The house looked different now. New paint, new furniture, new everything. I'd gutted the bedroom entirely, new carpet, new walls, even a new mattress. It didn't feel like the place where my marriage had died anymore. It felt like mine. I'd gotten a promotion at work. Turns out, remaining calm and professional while your personal life implodes makes a good impression on the partners. They valued stability, and I was nothing if not stable. Turner, you're unflappable, my boss said when he offered me the senior forensic accountant position. The whole office knew what you were going through, and you never missed a beat. That's rare. Work keeps me grounded, I said. Always has. The raise wasn't insignificant. 30% bump plus a corner office. I used some of the extra money to renovate the kitchen. Lauren had always wanted a farmhouse sink and marble countertops. I installed industrial steel and concrete. Petty maybe, but satisfying. I was dating again. Nothing serious. A woman from my gym, another from an app, casual dinners and careful conversations. Sarah was the gym one. Physical therapist, divorced 2 years, no kids. We'd started talking near the rowing machines and progressed to coffee, then dinner, then occasionally more. You're very guarded, she told me one night, over drinks at a rooftop bar downtown. Is that a problem? Not a problem, just an observation. She swirled her wine. Every time we start to get deeper, you deflect. Change the subject. Make a joke. Bad habit. Bad history, I'd guess. I considered lying, But Sarah was too smart for that. My ex-wife had an affair with her sister's husband for almost 2 years. Sarah's eyes widened. That's specific. It was. I found out, gathered evidence, exposed them both at a family dinner. I shrugged. Not my finest moment, but effective. How long ago was this? About a year. And you're already dating? Casually, very casually. I met her eyes. I'm not looking for anything serious. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I thought you should know that. Sarah was quiet for a moment, processing. I appreciate the honesty. Most guys would just string someone along. I'm not most guys. No, she smiled slightly. You're definitely not. We kept seeing each other after that, on and off. It wasn't love, we both knew that. But it was companionship, human connection. Enough to remind me that intimacy didn't always lead to betrayal. Catherine was the dating app one. Healthcare administrator, never married, no kids by choice. She was sharp and funny and called me on my evasions. You do this thing, she said on our 4th date, where you answer questions without actually answering them. It's very smooth. I barely notice until afterward. Occupational hazard. I spend all day finding what people are hiding. So you learn to hide things yourself? Something like that. That must be lonely. I didn't have an answer for that. I wasn't ready to trust anyone fully yet. Maybe I never would be. But I wasn't closing myself off either. The gate creaked, and Gary Lawson appeared with 2 beers in hand. Thought you might want some company. He handed me a bottle and settled into the other porch chair. Nice evening. It is. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fireflies come out. You know, Gary said eventually, I never apologize for that day. Starting all that. Don't. I keep thinking if I'd just minded my own business. Gary. I turned to look at him. You told me the truth. Most people don't have the courage to do that. Most people would have looked the other way, figured it wasn't their problem. I almost did. But you didn't. And because of that, I got out of a marriage with someone who didn't love me, exposed a man who was stealing from his clients, and helped my sister-in-law escape a husband who would have kept lying to her forever. I took a sip of beer. You did me a favor. Gary was quiet for a moment. You really believe that? I really do. He nodded slowly. You're an interesting man, Jake. So people keep telling me. We finished our beers and watched the stars come out. The night was quiet. The house was quiet. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, so was my mind. There's an epilogue to this story, one I didn't expect. 6 months after my conversation with Gary, I received an email from a private investigator named Margaret. Nicole had hired her to look into Derek's history after the divorce, partly for the civil lawsuit she was pursuing, partly for closure. The full report was 20 pages, single-spaced. I read it in my office with the door closed, my coffee growing cold beside me. Before Lauren, before Nicole, Derek had another affair. Her name was Rebecca, married, mid-30s, a colleague at Derek's previous firm in Richmond. The affair had lasted about 8 months. Her husband found out, confronted Derek, and Derek had simply left. Quit his job, moved to Charlotte, started fresh. Rebecca's marriage ended. She'd lost her job too. Couldn't face working at the same firm where everyone knew what had happened. Last the PI could find, she was living in Ohio, remarried, trying to rebuild. But that wasn't all. Before Rebecca, there was another woman. Sarah, another colleague's wife, another careful seduction over months, another destroyed marriage. The pattern was consistent. Derek targeted married women who were connected to his professional network. Women who couldn't easily expose him without exposing themselves. Women who had something to lose. He'd position himself as a confidant first. The charming friend? the sympathetic ear. Then he'd escalate, slowly, testing boundaries. By the time the women realized they were in too deep, they felt complicit, trapped. "Your brother-in-law is a predator," Margaret wrote in her summary. "He's been doing this for at least a decade, possibly longer. He's careful, never the same city twice, never stays long enough for patterns to emerge. If not for your Thanksgiving revelation, he might have continued indefinitely." I sat with that for a long time. Lauren wasn't his first victim, and if I hadn't stopped him, she wouldn't have been his last. I called Nicole after I read the report. "Have you seen Margaret's findings?" "Yeah." Her voice was flat. "I read them." "You okay?" A long pause. "I thought I was special, you know? I thought, even when I found out about Lauren, I thought that was the exception, that what Derek and I had was real, and he just made a mistake. But I was never special. I was just next. The next town, the next woman, the next target." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "He probably would have gotten bored of Lauren eventually too, moved on, found someone else, left us all behind." "Probably." I keep thinking about those other women, Rebecca and Sarah. They had no idea either, did they? They thought they were the exception too. Most people do. Derek was good at making people feel chosen. I want to reach out to them. Let them know they're not alone. That's a generous impulse. Or a selfish one. Maybe I just want someone else to tell me I wasn't stupid for not seeing it. Nicole, you weren't stupid. None of you were stupid. You were trusting, and someone exploited that trust. There's a difference. She was quiet. Do you believe that? I believed Lauren for 6 years. I brought Derek into our family. If anyone should have seen it, it was me. But I didn't. Because that's how people like Derek work. I forwarded the PI's findings to the Regulatory Board and to the State Bar Association. If Derek ever tried to rebuild his career somewhere else, there'd be a record waiting for him. Some people might call that vindictive. I call it public service. A year and a half out from Thanksgiving, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was Lauren. "I'm getting married again. Thought you should hear it from me." I stared at that message for a long time. Not angry, not hurt, just curious. "Congratulations," I typed back. "I hope you're happy." "I'm trying to be." "I'm sorry for everything, Jake. I really am." I didn't respond to that. What was there to say? I blocked the number and got ready for my evening. Catherine was expecting me at 7, and I didn't want to be late. The house is quiet now. That's how I like it. Derek's doing his time. Lauren's starting over somewhere else. Nicole and I grab lunch once a month. 2 people who understand each other in ways nobody else can. Me? I've got a good job, a decent social life, and a house that finally feels like mine. Gary was right that first day. The walls really are thin between these houses. You can hear everything if you listen carefully enough. I've gotten very good at listening.